So this week I took to Reddit, and on r/askanamerican, I asked, what are some stereotypes Americans have towards football/soccer? Here are my results. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to The Real Football, the show that we talk about the sport that you play with your feet, not the one you play with your hands. My name is Gavin Titherington, and today I'm wearing something a little different. No collared shirt today. I thought I could bring out some of the jerseys I do wear and do have throughout that I've collected over the years. And this is one of my favorites. I plan on doing a whole video on some of the jerseys that I do have. But this one is a classic Kenny Dalglish FA Cup Finals champions from the 85-86 season. So something a little different, and also a little different today. We took to Reddit and I asked askanamerican, r/askanamerican, what are some stereotypes Americans have towards football and soccer? Football/soccer. So we're going to start off by looking at a few. I'm going to turn my computer into a tablet to make it look cooler, because I never tilt the screen like this, so doing it a little differently. But let's take a look at some of the answers that I got on the question that I posed. The top one, I actually got, let's see how many people replied. I had over 180 comments on this post, so more than enough answers to my question. But we're going to start off with the most popular one here, and it says flopping and faking injuries. Is it even a stereotype if it's just a true thing that happens? Well, in soccer or football, a lot of people do flop. It is a problem. It is a problem, and it's not being addressed by the referees. A lot of the referees just decide to give the foul or give the penalty even for someone who falls on the ground rather than giving it to someone who is on their feet. And that's why we see more and more players today going to the ground in order to win that penalty. A lot of people see it as something that makes soccer or football less masculine, I guess, is the term I'm looking for. But in all reality, these players, all they're trying to do is win the game. And if there's a thing or aspect of the sport that will enhance the opportunity to win the game, then they'll do it. Just like how basketball players drive to the rim just for the foul. I remember sitting on my couch watching Jimmy Butler take over 25 free throws in a playoff game when he was in Chicago against Boston back in 2017. And I was like, this is just so stupid. Every time he gets the ball, every time he's touched, he flails his arms. It's like, I mean, what Neymar is to football, LeBron is to basketball. It's that simple. There's no, well, Neymar does this. Well, they both flop. Each sport has flopping. And it's just the way that both sports are played. And in other sports, like American football, you see wide receivers vying for the ball and embellishing a pass interference call, or hockey players embellishing a trip. But in hockey, you are penalized for embellishment, which is interesting, and maybe should be a rule that should be implemented in other sports. But for flopping and faking injuries in football, yes, it's a thing. It's not even a stereotype. It's actually very true. But to only say that about football is wrong. It's in every sport. And that's what people are saying in the comments as well. So the next comment I have is, my best friend calls it a communist sport. Interesting. That's a bit extreme, but it's funny. Personally, I just don't think they score enough. I don't have much interest in a game that has a greater than usual probability of ending in 0-0. Also ties. I hate ties and morally opposed to them in every way in any sport. Well, this gentleman from Tennessee, I almost said Tallahassee, doesn't like football because of ties, basically. When a game ends 0-0 or 1-1, it's not something that this gentleman wants to see. And yes, tying in football is not fun. It's not a great time to watch a 0-0 draw. It can be boring, but if you are into the match at the beginning and you watch it through and through and you understand what is happening in the sport, then it's not boring for the people who understand that a 0-0 draw means 1 point. I mean, you have smaller sides like the bottom half of the Premier League, like your Sheffield Uniteds, your West Bromwich Albions, those teams that fight for that draw every week and fight for the win, obviously, is what their main goal is. But getting a draw means 1 point. And in a system like the Premier League and most leagues around the world for football, they're on a points-based system. Unlike basketball or football where it's wins, it's a point-based system. So you get 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, 0 for a loss. And it's actually very similar in hockey, the point system. You get 2 points for a win, 1 point for an overtime loss, and 0 points for a loss in regulation in hockey, at least in the NHL. And what the draws have that typify football compared to hockey is that there are far less games. There's 38 games in a Premier League season as opposed to 82 in the NHL. And it's not the Premier League, the league competitions are not competitions where you can find a winner each week, out and out. There might be some teams who win, who utilize the draw, and it feels like a win, but it's not a win, obviously. And yes, like I said, 0-0 draws and draws in general are disappointing, but I wouldn't consider them to be boring, and I wouldn't morally oppose them like this person did. Here's an interesting one. Packed Sands 300 moved from California to Germany. It seems like in his tag. He said that it seems to be much more popular among school kids than among adults. There are reasons to this in America that soccer/football are predominantly played by young children or adolescents, and it has to do with how the ease of access to the game. I mean, you can go anywhere and find a recreational league for your child in soccer, and you don't have to pay much. It's you pay the league fee, and you obviously have to buy boots and shin pads and socks, but besides that, and a soccer and a ball, besides that, that's it. It's a very cost-effective sport as opposed to American football, but you're paying upwards of $1,000 for the equipment, as well as hockey. Basketball is different. It doesn't involve as much money to play. I mean, you need shoes and a basketball and a hoop, but hoops are not easy to get either. But for football, you don't need a net. You can have 2 shoes and those are your nets. So it attracts a lot of people because the amount of effort you have to put in and money in order to play the sport is drastically lower than any other sport. And it's an easy sport for parents as well to put their kids into because it's great exercise and the kids will have a great time going out and kicking a ball. And it's easy. You bring them to practice, you pick them up, and you don't have to worry about smelly gear as much as in other sports. For a parent, soccer/football is the easiest sport to sign your children up for. Okay, this one's funny. Gummy Bear Hawk, an American in Germany, states, most teams are made up of people who failed out of acting school, so they succeeded at a career in soccer. Well, that has a lot of fallacies to it. Okay? There are many people who fail out of acting school and go into normal jobs. Most of those people that fail out of acting school probably don't have the athleticism it takes to just completely switch their careers around and play football. That's not how it works. Most of these athletes grow up playing football and training. So one that fails out of acting school probably doesn't have that type of drive to play football or any other sport. Again, it's one of those comments that has to revolve around diving. Like I said, diving is in every sport, and it is a stereotype in soccer. It's true, but it revolves itself around a stereotype that football produces the most divers. I would argue that aquatic centers produce the most divers, but that's besides the point. It's in every sport. You're not going to find a sport where there's people who aren't looking for an edge to win the game. I mean, why do you think LeBron scores so many points from the free throw line? Okay, this one's interesting. This gentleman said, it's incredibly boring. The match is 90 minutes, and there might be 4 to 5 shots on goal per team. And a score of 1-0 or 1-1 is probably the mode. There is rarely any drama to do it because so few exciting moments happen per game. And then he went on to state a bunch of things about other sports and how other sports have more exciting things happen throughout the match. And obviously this person doesn't understand the game. Not everybody can have intellectual property in every aspect of their life, and this guy chose not to put any thought into what he was saying, which is fine. It's Reddit. It probably took him 5 minutes to type this, but he doesn't understand that just because there aren't any goals doesn't mean there's no drama. I think that's stupid, especially in the last 10 minutes of a match. If it's still 0-0, there's obviously, teams are still going to fight for that 3 points, and usually it's one team fighting for the 3 points and another fighting for the draw, and more often than not it ends up in a draw. But saying there's rarely any drama is completely false. That's not a good statement. It's fallible. And he also went on to say, another person asked, why do you think 0-0 is so boring? He says, because in soccer, that usually means neither team had any offensive talent. Okay, you can go to a match. I mean, off the top of my head, because I'm a Liverpool supporter, Liverpool beat Barcelona 4-0 at Anfield, and Barcelona beat Liverpool 3-0 at the Nou Camp. Does that mean Liverpool had zero offensive talent on the pitch, or an overly defensive posture? For Barcelona, no. Do you think Barcelona with Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez had zero offensive talent when they lost 4-0 at Anfield? No. So again, this gentleman, DG lawyer, I would not hire him as my attorney because his arguments are fallible beyond reasonable doubt. So, next. Again, it's boring. Nothing exciting ever happens. That is completely false. I think anybody who's watched a match of football in the last year knows that's completely false. Nothing ever happens. That one's funny. It's mostly just running and faking injuries. Basketball. It's literally the same thing. I would say that there are more faking of injuries in football. That is true. And, you got guys rolling on the floor like they just got shot with a .50 caliber. But that happens in other sports too, just like basketball. Basketball is easily the comparison that I look for when I hear faking injuries, flopping. So that's what I look for. So Disco Sprinkles from Texas, he goes, in America, it's the moms in their SUVs that come along with the sport. Strangely, tons of kids play it when they're younger, but when they move on to more mainstream sports like football and basketball, this is true. Not about the moms in their SUVs. That does come along with the sport. Again, that's another stereotype in the United States are soccer moms with their SUVs. Any parent who has a child playing sports and has multiple children playing sports usually drive a bigger car for equipment purposes in the back and lugging kids around. Actually, whether it's an SUV or a minivan, makes it a hell of a lot easier to get your kids out of the car than as like a BMW 5 Series sedan. Like it doesn't make sense. Obviously, SUVs are more prominent with families. That's it's an interesting thought there, Disco Sprinkles. But a lot of kids, yes, I agree. A lot of kids play it when they're younger, but then they move on to more quote-unquote mainstream sports like football and basketball. That's true. Why? I think it has to come down with the stereotypes of America is not first in this sport. America is lagging behind with the rest of the world in the sport. So a lot of kids just say, I'm done. And the four major sports bring in a lot more viewership and revenue as well. And a lot of kids, when they're younger, tend to gravitate to the sports that are most on TV. And those are the sports that are most on TV. So seeing professional athletes play those sports, it makes others want to join in and do the same, especially at a younger age when kids are starting to idolize athletes. And not idolize in a bad way, not thou shalt not bear false idols, but looking up to specific athletes in sports. It's not uncommon for children to do that. And whoever's on the TV, obviously the four major sports are more on TV often, so they get more exposure. Kids start to gravitate to other sports. Football's on in the mornings that children don't really see. But again, yeah, that's a very, very true statement. They do move on to mainstream sports, but that's not a reason not to like it. I asked, what's a stereotype? Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a stereotype. There's some truth in that as well. So this gentleman said, it feels wimpy. I know it's not, and I enjoy playing for fun, but professional soccer feels that way. We really don't like ties either, and shootouts when they happen are badass. And I agree. I love shootouts, and I also hate them. I love the intensity that is involved with a penalty shootout, but it just seems so. It doesn't seem like a great way to show who won the game, who won the match. I'm more of a sudden death, golden goal type of watcher. That's a story for another day. Regardless, this gentleman or woman said that it feels wimpy. I mean, when you talk about a wimpy sport, I guess anything that doesn't involve the most contact is considered as what I would consider wimpy, I guess. But baseball isn't wimpy. Wimpy's that's a loaded word. There's a lot of he would have to elaborate in order for me to continue to understand what he's trying to say. It feels wimpy. Wimpy is a loaded word. What does he mean by wimpy? Is he talking about the contact that's involved in the sport? I'm not too sure. One of the comments that I keep seeing is hooligans. Now, I guess that is a stereotype because football fans are the most passionate in the world. There's no denying it. I mentioned it multiple times throughout this YouTube channel and throughout this the Real Football podcast. Yeah, they're the most passionate in the world, and there's no denying it. There's not even the second place sport for most passionate fans isn't even close to football. In the United States, I would consider football to be just very similar in terms of nature to college football. So, yeah, a hell of a lot more passionate than that. But regardless, yeah, there are a lot of people that love to drink during the match, getting pints and getting a little too inebriated to the point where they're slinging slurs out of their mouths. Yeah, it happens. It's part of the game, and it's part of the culture in Europe and in South America. It's the way it is. And you go to South America, you go to a Boca Juniors and River Plate match, or Flamengo in Sao Paulo, you're going to find the same type of crowd that you would find in Germany again when Dortmund play Schalke, and it's similar to that. And the passion is is there, and it's more than it is in the United States for sports. And if you have the opportunity to experience it, you would be saying the same thing. The passion is just, it's there. You can actually feel it. It's just a different feel, and people who have never experienced it don't understand that. Until someone does, until you do, then I would refrain from insulting the fans and condemning the bad ones, but leave some room for understanding until you actually experience what the Europeans and South Americans experience. This one's good. Vuvuzelas is a stereotype of football/soccer. That one's good. For anyone who doesn't understand, the vuvuzelas are those big trumpets that they played at the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. Those were quickly banned after that tournament, but people still find the stereotypical vuvuzelas to be prominent today. So be it. But again, that's one of those things that happened and has been outlawed from stadiums all around the world. My personal stereotype towards Americans who like soccer is that they're lying to themselves about liking so they can be edgy. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that one. Edgy? Really? Because you like a sport, everybody who associates with soccer is edgy? That's a stereotype in its own. I guess that's what I asked, so I got the answer. That's true. All right, fine. If that's a stereotype that you find, then go for it. So there were 3 things that a lot of people had to say about the world's sport. A, flopping. B, a child's game. And C, boring. So before I asked, I made a mental list of all the things that I thought people would say, and those are the 3 things that were at the top of my list, and obviously they were brought true here. But stereotypes are involved with everything. Not everybody's gonna like football, just like not everybody likes hockey, not everybody likes basketball. It's all subjective at the end of the day. You like what you like, and you don't what you don't. And it's not worth going to other people and discriminating against them for what they like. It's childish and immature. But I just wanted to ask the question because I wanted to gain a broader and more of an understanding of what the population thinks of soccer outside of the sports realm. I'm sure a lot of these people, I don't know where any of these people came from. I'm sure a lot of them aren't even athletes, don't even watch sports in general, and they were able to come up with some stereotypes. But at the end of the day, people are going to like what people are going to like, and people are going to not like what they don't. So stereotypes are always going to be a part of sports. And today I decided to bring some to light for what Americans have to say about the beautiful game. Thank you so much for watching this week on The Real Football. My name is Gavin Titherington. If you enjoyed the content today, please feel free to like and subscribe. And if you want to get up-to-date information, turn on the notification bell as well. Again, thank you for watching. This has been The Real Football with Gavin Titherington. Peace.